I'm going to be trying to really get to know some of the players in the challenger scene right now. And my first guest is Broken Shard,
Hi
who
there.
is the jungler for Complexity Black. So,
hmm
well, Broken Shard, my first question was that you've had a lot of you've had a lot of experience in the scene before coming to NA for the for to play in NA, and I was wondering what the scene was like in the pre LCS era for teams that weren't in like the top few teams.
Um, it was a little bit strange. Like it's like trying to think of a time where there was no internet or something like that.
Interesting.
Because the way that LCS kind of like revolutionized the way like teams like it kind of just gave every team like some kind of like end goal to look to. Like when you finish high school, you look to college. That's kind of what it feels like to go from an amateur to an LCS. It's like you're graduating high school and going to college.
Interesting.
But like before the LCS, there were definitely like as a spectator, it was more fun, in my opinion, to watch international tournaments. Like
I
IEMs were
see. I
like,
see.
oh, IEM is coming up. You watching IEM New York? Now it's like, are you watching LCS next week or what happened at LCS last week? It kind of streamlined it for a spectator. As a player in like I would say the amateur scene, which would have been like maybe everyone except for maybe the top 4 or 5 teams. It was definitely a little bit more difficult. Amateur tournaments, like we had something in Europe called 4PL.
Hmm.
Um, it was a German tournament that was hosted by the 4PL website, which was a weekly tournament with actually a really good prize pool and a monthly tournament. And teams like Fnatic and SK were playing in these tournaments, so there were these tournaments that teams could look to play, and it just was like a weekly thing. The exposure wasn't there. The lands definitely, unless you were like a top team, it was very difficult to like get exposure.
Hmm.
But the tournaments were definitely there. Like you could definitely play tournaments.
I see. I see. All right. Well, building off of that, then I was gonna ask about your time on Dragonborns. So, my first question is, what were your thoughts on Shushei? Like he was a very well known player, still is, but he doesn't seem to be as involved as much. And Dragonborns was kind of his last major involvement. Do you have thoughts on that?
Shushei is a nice guy. Um, like on a personal level, I actually have nothing against Shushei.
Hmm.
I think he's a great guy and a fun person to be around. Unfortunately, I never thought that he was ever a top tier quality player.
Hmm.
Um, and I felt that Dragonborns was a huge failure as an organization and a huge mistake.
I see. I
Uh,
see.
from a managerial standpoint, it was a horrible, horrible experience.
I see. Well, two questions to build off that. My first one was that you did work as a coach for them after you did work as
Very,
a coach for them,
very
correct?
briefly, very
Very
briefly.
briefly. Could you give me some quick thoughts on because it seems like some of the players you managed to grab, like Dexter and the Heimerdinger's Colossi team, managed to go on to some success. Do you have some thoughts on those players? Or
Immediately when I knew I had to step down from the team, I immediately started thinking about different junglers to approach. And I kind of narrowed my search down to 2 junglers. One of them was Amazing, who's currently on Copenhagen Wolves. Back then he was on Team Acer, and the other one was Maluno, who just, I believe, the LoL Pro lineup had disbanded.
yeah, that was right
The
around
idea
the.
was to pick up a jungler and 2 substitutes, 2 extra substitutes, substitutes that could play multiple roles. I looked at Extinct not only as a mid laner, but as a very, very like strong mechanical player. And I definitely considered that we need to pick him up, put him on a sub, so that not only it pressures the main lineup to do well, specifically Shushei.
Yes, yes.
It was never the intention to replace Extinct with Shushei. It would have only happened that I knew that if something were to go wrong and we needed to bench someone and Shushei was that person we needed to bench, we could fall back on a very good mid laner.
I see, I see.
Extinct was that guy. The other one I want to pick up was Yamato Cannon. Not only his experience in like the pre-LCS scene, and like his the way he like interacts as a player,
Yes.
he could definitely bring ideas into the um into the main team and like sort of like a co-coach or just utilize the subs as much as possible.
I see, I
So
see.
when I picked up subs and of course Maluno, my intention was to pick up the strongest players around so that not only could we have them, but we should deny them from other teams.
I see. I
Could
see.
you imagine how big of a deal it would be like to have to play against Extinct?
Yeah, no, I totally see that.
Yeah, he would have.
That's
He was definitely one of the better mid laners at the time.
I see. Yeah. So building off of that, also, you mentioned the organizational problems in Dragonborns. So I've noticed that there seems to be a bit of problem. There can often be problems with organizations. Well, partially in Europe that I feel like you would be more able to talk about, like Dragonborns or like Lemon Dogs, for example. Do you think that there's a is this like a specific problem? Because I've noted that you mentioned that the European challenger scene also has issues compared to North America.
It wasn't necessarily a EU centric problem. It was more that the managers were shady as hell. The CEO of Dragonborn stole a lot of money from the players, and I'm still like, I was promised something like 2,500 euros
Wow.
or dollars, I think,
Wow.
which was the money that like I was promised at the very beginning when I said that I was stepping down. Is what he
Wow.
told me I would be receiving as a per monthly basis, and it was actually a huge reason that I even sat down and signed a contract because if I wasn't going to be getting paid like straight off the bat, I wouldn't sign a contract. I would like to continue playing on other teams.
Yeah, that's
But
ridiculous. Wow.
so I believe some of the players on the team still have to get paid or have not been paid. I believe Dexter didn't receive some money from the times that he subbed in, and that was the money that Riot gave to the organization to give directly to the players.
I
So
see.
that's the big problem with
Yeah,
Dragon.
that sounds like a serious issue. Well, a lot of the great players you've talked about, like Extinct, Yamato Cannon, like these are all really great players, but they're not really around in the scene as much right now. Are there any other players who just kind of slipped through the cracks because of like the time before the LCS or because of like organizational issues afterwards, or are there any like really great players like that come to mind?
I'd have to really think about it, but like Extinct, he was on NIP for a short period of time, and then left on his own accord.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That might
Um,
not have been the best example on
yeah,
that one.
Dexter went straight to Lemon Dogs. Amazing went off to join Copenhagen Wolves and qualify, and he's one of the more like, I guess, looked at junglers right
Yeah, yeah,
now.
no, he is, he is.
Maluno played on NIP for a brief period of time before recently retiring. Slipping through the cracks, it's really hard to say. Like, I guess people that are legitimately good and like never really got opportunity. It's very hard to find those people.
I see, I see. That's interesting. Would you say it has to do with the competitive nature of European solo queue?
Yeah. Oh well, not really competitive nature, and I don't think it has to do anything with solo key. It's just like I feel that EU is at a point where it might revert back to recycling talent,
I
which is a
see.
problem. Compared to like recently, NA has been picking up new, fresh faces
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Quas or Bunny Fufu or Sheep. I'm definitely missing someone here. There's
Yeah,
gotta be one
I
more.
mean there's so many new guys, it's
There,
hard
yeah,
to keep track.
and the main problem, the criticism that people have been giving NA teams is that they're recycling talent, and they've stopped that. But I feel that it's very difficult to get places on EU because they want to recycle their talent rather
I
than
see.
look at new fresh faces.
I see.
And a majority of the really good players, specifically two great junglers, are underage on EU right now. So
I
I'm
see.
I'm looking at Amin and Ku. Amin, the old NIP jungler, and Ku being the C9 jungler.
Yeah, the
C9
guy on
EU.
Cloud9 EU. Yeah. I see. Well, two final thoughts on the this whole Dragonborns thing before moving on to North America. My first thought is I feel like the teams have really improved over time. Like for example, this Dragonborn squad made it to the EULCS. They almost requalified, but how well do you think they do right now? Like if we took this Dragonborns team and put them in the NACL, not the LCS, but the NACL, with like like you guys, LMQ, Cloud9, Teammate, those guys, how well do you think Dragonborns would compete?
Like right now, if I just pulled up the players and pulled them into play right now,
Um, well, like assume not maybe not right now if some of them have like retired or like fallen off, but maybe if you pulled all the players when they were at that practice point when they were still practicing, and then just put them in the NACL right now, how well do you think they do?
I don't know. I felt that the team that I played with, Dragonborns, was a very hit or miss team. We had one thing that we definitely had was we had crazy picks, like very unique play styles and very crazy picks. Hosan was the probably one of the very first competitive Draven players. Shushay, a big fan of Lux and played her a lot before she became popular. Spontex with Evelyn top lane. I mean, we had The reason I think a huge reason for why we qualified in the
Mhm.
first place was that the meta heavily suited us, and the picks that we could play were just picks that we played well as.
I
I
see.
don't think that we'd have the same success if that Dragonborn's lineup was active today.
I see. Interesting. Interesting. So, well, my last thought on the EU scene is that like Europe is really well known for being a mid-centric, like that's clearly the stereotype, like Europe mid-centric, and well, like there's like a stereotype around that China is very AD centric. Like you can see that with like like Royal or like World Elite or like those teams, or even like LMQ right here.
Yeah,
And like they explain that it's because in Dota they focus very heavily on one carry. So is there a particular reason why in the EU scene, like is there like I guess like an evolutionary reason per se that Europe became so mid-centric?
I just feel like it's that the way the junglers were like the priority of the junglers. Like if you play with the mid laner, you're gonna have the most success. Champions like Lee Sin, who are heavily contested in EU, are just like push mid, invade jungle, kill jungler. It's kind of
Yeah.
like
Okay.
the aggressive jungle nature fits best with the early mid game pressure that a mid laner can give. Not so much like an AD carry.
I see. I see. Well, so now I wanted to move on to your current situation with the Complexity team. So my first question is that you are known as a coach for the Complexity squad before joining the lineup. Is that true?
One of the old management, the main manager of FXO at the time, pulled me in to
Hmm.
discuss some things about the team. And at the time, I was doing stuff through Dragonborns, but I was kind of like pulling away. I offered my services as per se a coach slash helper, and I did do some work with the team. And yeah, they did know me, and I did coach them, and I did bring in some ideas for the team, as much as I could.
Okay, I
And so
see.
they did know me for a while, for a long time, all the way up till they became TBD.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Well, another thing I wanted to ask then is, as you've played as a coach and you've also played as a player, I was wondering if you had a thought on, I guess, do you have a quick way to define the overall complexity play style, if you will? Like, I've had a hard time just kind of pinpointing, like, what exactly do you guys focus on, or like, what do you guys do, or is
We're
it
a
more of like,
heavy early game team, as you can see by like the way that we play and the champions that we pick. We're very good early game, and but lately our mid game and late game are like not so great. So that's kind of what we've been trying to practice and work on.
okay, okay. Do you have any thoughts on how to improve this mid or late game, or?
It's just like identify what win conditions the team comp that we had, you know, what we have is, and it's just play smart, play objective based. And if you take a look at like our first split in Coke League, playing up till the LMQ games, we dominated early game in every single game, including the ones versus LMQ.
Yeah, no, I did see that. That was something I actually noted that you guys were quite strong early game, but
And against lesser teams, lesser I guess weaker teams who don't know how to deal with playing from behind, it's very easy to close out games. I felt that the reason that our mid game and late game kind of like faltered was because we played against weaker teams. And playing against weak teams like that when you dominate early doesn't teach you anything.
interesting.
Losing to LMQ, I learned more in those two losses to LMQ than I did in almost 3-4 weeks of scrims against teams.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so I actually something I wanted to discuss about having the opportunity to play against these strong teams. Would you say your main scrim partners are LCS teams, or are
Yeah,
they?
our main
Um,
scrim partners are LCS team. We majority of the scrims that we play are against LCS teams. We very rarely scrim challenger teams.
okay. Another thing I wanted to ask is the nature of the NACL league, which is like the league that you played in the NACL finals recently, not the finals, sorry, the semifinals against Cloud9. Do you think this league is helpful in terms of? Do you think that how?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay,
I don't think that the NACL is a very good uh, part of the challenger scene, and I do hope that they continue into the next season as like as an alternative to Coke
yeah,
League
that is
for
looking really likely. As
for teams that don't get into Coke League but still need something to do. I guess is the right thing to say.
okay,
It's good practice.
okay.
And definitely it's like good exposure. I definitely lean on more on exposure than actual practice.
I see, I see. Yeah, because like the other scenes don't really have as much of that. Like I guess
Oh
EU
no
League
no,
doesn't really have
I
that.
mean
So
you have like those small like kind of bracketed tournaments like elimination tournaments, but I think that the NACL kind of like round robin thing is quite good.
yeah, okay. So well, I wanted to talk about another time that Complexity was dealing. Well, back then they were TBD was dealing with some issues. Back when you stepped into the team, what the team kind of went back on a run. Like they ended up placing third in the NACL, qualified for the the promotion tournament as strongly considered the top team, but in the times before that they were looking pretty weak. What changes exactly did you invite back onto the team when you joined that led to this like sudden change?
Stronger jungler.
Stronger jungler.
I definitely felt that Heaven Time, like as much as I'm very good friends with him. At the time, he was underperforming very hard, heavily,
Hmm.
and the team was like losing a lot of motivation playing it. Joining the team, I brought a unique look into the game because I brought different picks and different types of play styles, and you could see that if you watch the games, they were very one-dimensional when Heaven Time was playing, and the games when I was playing, picks and play styles were heavily derived from like EU play style. I distinctly remember the game versus Ninjas in Disguise, Napkins in Disguise.
Napkins
Yeah,
in disguise. Yes, the
yeah.
one with front you.
No, that was I believe it was when Flappy was playing, and I was
Oh,
playing
okay,
under
okay.
Heaven Time's account. People were like, "That isn't Heaven Time. Something is different about this team." We were playing a Varus, and we were playing Double Assassin. I don't think it was Double Assassin. I don't distinctly remember. We were playing a 1-3-1 playstyle, which I want to say borrowed from Lemon Dogs, who
I
had
see.
been like watching and interacting with the players very heavily. I borrowed the 1-3-1 playstyle, and we put it to practice in those games. And if anyone wants to go back and take a look at those games, and you could definitely tell a difference between TBD with Heaven Time and TBD with Broken Shard. Not necessarily only a larger champion pool, which I definitely felt I had. The ping didn't even matter when there was a strong sense of direction in the game, and I was the main shot caller for a majority of the time there.
I see. I see. Well, that's really quite interesting. But you actually brought up lemon dogs and your closeness with them, and I actually read a rumor, I guess somewhere, that said that for a time when you were on Dragonborns, you were actually playing with most of the lemon dogs squad, and you're considering forming a team with them. Is this true?
Um, I was. I remember a week after coming back from Poland, the team known as Sinners Never Sleep, We Will Fail, or Mr. Rala, Nuke Duck, and Zoro Zero had been looking for a jungler, and they specifically needed a jungler for that day to substitute. I played several scrims with them, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to play on the team." And I said, "Oh, that's really cool," and like I liked every single one of these players. Um, Still talk to Nuke Duck and to Mr. Rala a lot lately. But it was a complicated situation that had to do with contracts and stuff. I really did want to play
Unfortunate.
with that team though. Yeah,
That's
I definitely think
unfortunate.
that if because I remember the next time that I tried out for them, I was out of practice and I didn't play enough. But I definitely think that if I had decided to stay on that team and practice with them, I would have become a better player faster with them, and I definitely think I would still be on that team.
I see. I see. That really sounds like an unfortunate opportunity there. It's really
A
unfortunate.
wasted opportunity, I
Yeah. Yeah.
guess.
There we go. There we go. Well, moving back onto your time on complexity, then after that side note, I wanted to ask a few questions about the last promotion series. Sorry, the last season before we move on to the current one. And
Okay.
I wanted some quick thoughts on a few teams that you played alongside with in the Challenger League. And the first one was your predecessors on complexity, the squad with Loud Mortis.
I felt that they were a strong team when they had Prolly. Up until they lost Prolly, they were a good team.
Were
And
they
then
good after? There was a period where they did not have Loud Mortis, but they did have Prolly. Would you say they were still strong at that point?
I do not think Lauder Mortis was that influential on the game. Not as much as Prolly.
I see. I
You
see.
take a look at the mids in the scene at the time, it was heavily dominated by Coast's Shifter and Complexity's Prolly. It
Yeah.
really
Yes.
was a huge gap of experience and difference between those two and every other mid laner. Like I honestly thought Arthlon was a great player, but you just won't would he wouldn't like he would struggle super hard against Prolly and Shifter, specifically Prolly and Shifter.
Speaking of Arthlon, I did want to ask you about him. What exactly would you say were Arthlon's strengths and weaknesses as a player?
Strengths, he's like mechanically very good. Decision making is off, and if I was able to like micromanage him, he would succeed very hard. His versatility in champion picks was good, but his inability to play more than several champions was quite weak. Specifically, we used him as like a crutch because we could play him almost anywhere and he would do well. Like we would play Mundo top and have Westerice play an assassin mid often, and he would be perfectly fine with that.
I see. What changes would you say have come with bringing Prawley in over him then? Like other than you mentioned that there's a big experience gap, are there other contributing factors from Prawley? Because what you mentioned about Prawley Arthlon being able to switch roles probably doesn't really bring that. So
Absolutely. We have a very solid mid laner with a large champion pool and a vast amount of experience and mastery on multiple champions. Probably one of the best mid laners I've played with since playing with Nuke Duck. He's probably the best mid laner I've played with.
I see. How would you compare probably to the EU mids then? Because seeing as you have
I
experience on
honestly
this,
think I honestly think probably on EU would be quite successful.
that's very ringing endorsement. That's very impressive. I would have to agree. I do think that he's very good as a
Probably
player.
one of the best mids in NA.
Yeah, he had a lot of He had a lot of success originally on Complexity too. So, another squad I wanted to discuss was Quantic Gaming, the Korean squad that they brought in. What thoughts do you have to share on that?
Carried by Apple.
Completely.
I honestly think that Apple carried that team on his back 9 out of 10 games. Suno was hit or miss. What was their jungler's name?
Their jungler's name was Prime. Quantic
Prime.
Prime.
Prime was hit or miss very often. Locodoco was hit or miss. What was the name of their support? Gunza was really good. I honestly thought Apple and Gunza were so good. They were like, I would see them play and I'm like, holy shit. Am I allowed to curse? Yeah, I'm just gonna do
No,
it anyway.
absolutely. Go for it.
Holy
Go for
shit, where did these guys come from? Quantic should have renamed to Carried by Apple and Gunza. They were that good.
Would you say
Gunza and
that?
Apple were such solid players.
Would you say that they'd have experience right now playing in the LCS?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Apple and Gunza would make almost any LCS team right now a lot stronger. Maybe say for TSM and C9, they kind of have it, but I honestly think Apple could replace and compete with any top laner in NA right now.
Wow.
I lift Apple up above that because he put so much pressure on me as a jungler. It was so hard to deal with him sometimes.
No, you had Westrice too, who's really good.
Westrice was good, and even then, like he would play Shyvana and just fucking proxy, and I'd be like, well, he's taking my jungle, he's pressuring my blue buff. What do? I go to try to fight him. He has like a Sunfire and Randuin's. I deal no damage to him. He was like the one who did like the proxying before. It was very hard to deal with Apple as a player. He was very difficult to deal with and shut down.
Well, my final thought actually is on Team Coast, who played in the NACL with you guys, and my questions on this is twofold. My first is your opinions on Team Coast as a team, and my second is well, Team Coast kind of dominated the NACL, so I wanted to ask about your thoughts on the difference between LCS versus NACL, and also your opinions on whether or not this has changed, as in has the NACL gotten much stronger.
I'll just the Coast one first.
Okay.
Definitely felt specifically Coast and Curse were very good for the NA Challenger scene. I mean, as a teams, their playstyles heavily countered inexperienced teams. Coast's heavy split push and strong solo laners was very difficult, especially in a scene where solo laners are very hard to come by. On top of that, Curse's heavy like rotational and unique playstyle was like super hard to counter. So like it was a combination of all the way that the teams played, not necessarily a mechanical advantage. It was just like the way the teams played were very hard for inexperienced teams to play against. Having Coast and Curse in the scene definitely increased the level. Same with like LMQ. There's a huge difference in skill in the very first split, and now a lot of the teams are very close together.
I see. I see. Okay. Well, that was interesting. You brought up some thoughts on Curse. What exactly do you think about I Will Dominate in the jungle? He's had a lot of experience.
I Will Dominate's great. He's a great jungler. I'm not saying that because I'm very close with Dominate. We're like really good friends. He's a great jungler. He's aggressive, in your face, hyperactive, like very push forward, and that's really good for Curse.
Also building off of that, you mentioned that Shifter and Probably were, far beyond the other mid laners in the NACL. What did you think about Voyboy in the mid lane? Because he's received a lot of, a lot of controversy.
Underwhelming in the beginning. He heavily like relied on assassins and playing assassins in the beginning. We would see him play like Kassadin before Kassadin was permabanned all the time, and his Kassadin is actually quite good. But he was underwhelming up until recently. I think Voyboy just didn't hit his stride, and now he's like starting to get it. He's like, no, not even starting to get it. He's actually starting to push forward and starting to become like a lot more competitive as a mid laner.
Well, and the last team I'm gonna have to ask about, and this builds on to another series of questions, would be Evil Geniuses. Because honestly, I would say that the Evil Genius, like O3 lost Evil Geniuses was probably one of the most shocking losses in in the promotional series like ever. Like, do you have thoughts on that or?
My thoughts on Evil Geniuses.
Evil Geniuses as a team, and later on moving on to your thoughts on the series.
I'm allowed to be completely honest, right?
Yeah, you're allowed to be completely honest.
I want to play EG. I want to destroy them. Okay. EG. Like, where do I begin? This team, they had a solid chance to be a top four team in the NALCS,
Really?
but they had a chance. Like, we were the weaker team playing against them, not necessarily mechanically, just mentally. We were
Okay.
definitely the weaker team. Red Buff was too strong too. There's that. You can put that in the interview. Uh, they're having a very difficult time. The inconsistency of Pro Bellator is definitely shining through. The lack of mastery over the current meta junglers is showing through for Snoopy. I'm just gonna say it. An underwhelming AD carry performance from Yellow Pete is definitely coming through to the show, and Inox's lack of mastery over the current meta of top laners.
Would you say that Crepo is
A team out of meta. Crepo is the exception. Crepo is really, really good. Thresh Leona, Alistair Morgana, he's like really good. Yeah.
No, he is. He is.
Everyone else, like Pobelter, he can be really good. He's like the prodigal child. He's like so good at mid laner. Then there's the other Pobelter, which just like fails everything. And it's like he's super inconsistent. The other three it just feels like a team out of meta. Inox, Yellow Pete, and Snoopy they feel like players that are playing in a different meta. Like picking the Nautilus versus Kha'Zix recently, like I have no idea.
I don't know about
I'm
that
sitting
one.
here like, why are you picking Nautilus? Just play something like good, not Nautilus.
So
Like
would you
play
say
something
that?
else.
So would you say that your loss to them in the promotion series was because the meta they had hit the correct point for their playstyle during the meta, or
It's just that we were not the prepared mental team. Like we were not prepared for a team. We expected to come in and destroy them because that's what we had been doing. We were coming in super confident. We were definitely expecting to like. I don't even care saying about this now. I honestly felt that we were going to 3-0 them. That's just the way that we've been playing. And when they came and we saw them prepared and like somewhat knowledgeable about what we play, and they picked a solid comp and they had good picks in the first game, we were just like, well shit, what are we gonna do now? We were supposed to destroy these guys, and we just went on mental tilt from the first game.
my final question is about my final question about the EG thing is that what would you say you guys have come back with stronger now if you guys were to face them again?
A more consistent mid laner. Just a more consistent gameplay, I guess is what I'm trying to go for. I feel that we, as a team, we've leaped levels with Prawley. That's just the way I feel.
Okay. Okay. So speaking of Crawley and leaping levels in your current form, could you give me some quick thoughts on the other strong teams in the NACL? There's quite a few of them. LMQ, C9T, Teammate in specific those three.
Teammate are like the way I feel about Teammate is they're just a team that got really lucky together. They're a team of solid players individually who are very lucky to just off the bat and like just specifically with each other they had good synergy. And I felt that
they just hit the magical.
they just clicked so well. And like you could see that it's not only that the mechanical skill carried them, their team play was good too. So they just clicked super well. That's like the only explanation that I really have for that.
Well, I really hope they actually there's talks about them disbanding. I actually really hope they stay together. It's like
I hope so too. I hope
Yeah,
so too.
they're-
I think
they're
that they
great.
could definitely make waves as a team. Um, got my eye on Maple. Maple's actually played really well, but
C9T.
C9T, very weak. They're like the polar opposite of us. Super weak early game, mediocre mid game, very good late game. Everyone hop on Altex's back and let him carry.
He has basically been their Prawley. Like them adding him over who they had in the AD position before has been a massive jump. Like that guy's so good.
And then replacing Nidus was just like a huge mistake for them in the beginning because they didn't have a solid shot caller. Now their late game is very scary as a team, especially when they have Altec. Like this guy pulls farm out of his ass the way that he farms. Like it's like 15 minutes of the game, he's got 100 CS. All right, 5 minutes later, okay, he's got 300 CS. Where the fuck happened?
It's like a bot. He's just generating them.
No, he literally, yeah, he actually pulls farm out of his ass. That's the only way that I can see him pulling those CS numbers. He farms incredibly well, and it never feels like Altec is ever like missing from fights.
I actually had another question concerning C9T. Um, what are your thoughts on Nidus? Because you coached him when he was on FXO, and
I
he
feel
doesn't
like
really have.
I feel like he's Lemonation light.
What do you mean by this?
Mechanically, he's not the best support. decision making, planning, picks and bans, very very good. And the only difference that I would put him between him and Lemonation is that he makes very good calls in game. Where I don't know if Lemonation is the kind of guy to make the calls in game. I think he's just more like an out of game like preparation type of player. Decision making and like he's like Lemonation light. He really is. That's like the best way that I can explain.
That's really interesting. I've actually never heard something similar to that before. Why do you think he's having trouble finding a team right now? He was
I
really.
honestly don't think he's like trying to find a team right now. I think he's just taking a break. I would be very surprised that like he wasn't if he was looking for a team that he didn't try out for Curse. Like he would have
Oh
made a good
yeah,
addition
oh
to
yeah,
Curse, or he might have made a good addition to XDG. Considering that Sheep and Bunny are good, but like try out Nidus too. He's good.
yeah. Well. No, going back to my questions about teams. Thoughts on LMQ?
They're really good. uh, they're good. They're just a good team. That's like
I'm like, would you like have specific strengths, like things that are hard to deal with, or?
I don't know, like came into the game with like such a solid early game, and we just almost like destroyed them early game in both games, and then they come back with like superior rotations. Like honestly, I think like the games that are close between challenger teams, they're just trolling. That's
Oh
like
wow,
I actually think that LMQ just
wow,
troll a lot of the times, or they
wow.
don't take the game seriously. It's a little bit like an aggressive thing to say, but they're like when they play at their best, they just destroy teams.
Yeah. Speaking of LMQ, what were your thoughts on Westerice picking Garen?
Demacia. It was a champion that we put a lot of practice into, and we felt that it was good. And at the end of the day, it wasn't even what was there what I'm looking for? It was just a champion that we felt that would be a good pick, and it wasn't even the reason that we lost the game. There were other reasons that we lost that game, and the Garen just like it was a pick that West really wanted to play and pull out.
Will we see a return?
No, no, hell no.
um. Well, last two teams I wanted to discuss. At the beginning of the season, you rated yourselves, the Walking Dead, currently Cloud9T, LMQ, and Cognitive Gaming as the strongest teams heading into the NACL season. Thoughts on what would have happened with the original Cognitive lineup?
It's a strange way to see because I felt that Zemfira was quite good, and nothing here was really good, and Ziblock was really good, but they had like issues finding a good top laner. Like Chris, I thought was really good for the team, and with Chris, Cognitive were strong. Then without Chris, it's like I don't really know. I wouldn't say Cognitive were a top 3 team coming in after losing Chris. I definitely felt that they became weaker, especially since they couldn't find a good enough replacement.
I see. And the final team I wanted to discuss is your, I guess, sister team right now, Complexity Red. Any thoughts on them, specifically NK Inc. and Golden Glue moving on into Dignitas?
I think Golden Glue's good. He's a good player. Skara was faltering, and I do agree with the change. We just have to wait and see Golden Glue perform more. I need to see more games with him to see. It'll take him some time definitely to hit his stride, but I definitely think he can make it there.
Okay, and I also asked about NK Inc. There's like a stereotype that he carries the team really hard, but would you have more thoughts to say on that?
On who? Sorry.
NK Inc.
Mm, I don't know. Uh, I guess he's pretty good of a player. Definitely like a solid jungler, but he's really hit or miss. He goes too aggressive sometimes and goes too like too far in and then pays for it by dying.
All right, and the last team I wanted to discuss was yourselves, Complexity Black. We did talk about this a bit earlier, but there's a bit of a, I guess, a reputation your team has that you guys tilt really easily, especially Westerice. Would you agree or refute?
I wouldn't say that we tilt very easily. Specifically, I don't think Westerice tilts very easily. I used to be the one to tilt very easily, but I'm not so like easily tilted anymore.
I see, I see. Okay, so that was actually my final NACL series questions, and now I wanted to move on to yourself, your personal playstyle, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So, how would you diagnose your strengths and weaknesses as a player? I'd say that well, part of it might be the whole like like your play on Dragon Force. Dragon Force wasn't a strong team, but or like the red buff thing. But people seem to think that you don't have good mechanics. Would you refute that or?
My mechanics have grown stronger since the current meta relies on like assassin junglers. In the beginning, yeah, I was a very decision making kind of shot calling based jungler, but now it's I definitely think my mechanics have improved very fast, very good.
Uh,
Much mechanics, very amazed as well.
Other perhaps strengths or weaknesses as a player that you'd like that you discuss, or if you prefer
Uh,
to keep them secret
my champion pool definitely
as
is
a strength.
very as a strength. I have
Yes,
a large
yes,
champion pool. I can play
like
many
that.
champions. Picks and bans drafting as a player. Mechanics are very good. Mastery over like the OPs. I can play meta champions. I guess my decision making is now like my weak point. Is just my decision making.
Mhm.
Sometimes I make mistakes and like they kind of throw games. It's just like I don't make as many calls anymore. That's all.
I see. Well, okay. Another thing I wanted to ask was, what, well, there's like there's like people discuss like for example mid jungle synergy or like top jungle synergy. What role or on complexity would you say you have the most synergy with, or what lane do you most prefer to gank?
Probably me and
Probably.
probably have good synergy together. Probably the best on the team. Me and probably.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. We just kind of clicked. We played a lot of solo queue games together, and when we feel that our synergy is faltering, I just send him a message on League of Legends. I say synergy, and we go duo queue. So I just feel that the mid jungle synergy is very important, especially since I was brought up as a mid centric jungler. I
Oh,
had it with Arthalon. Like I would do a lot for Arthalon and with Arthalon because like with all due, like respect to him, like micromanaging him early and mid was like the best thing for the team. And so if
mhm.
I just like told him what to do and like he would do it well and like we would win games pretty much.
Arthalon actually,
Like not to discredit him in any way, he was a good player. I really liked playing with him, but like that was like the key to success. Is like we just me and the mid laner work together.
I see, I see. Actually, a quick note on Arthalon. We already discussed him earlier, but he actually tried to make a bit of a comeback on the Super Team NA. What would you say about Arthalon returning to the pro scene, or like your thoughts on how he'll
I mean,
perform?
best of luck to him. I hope that he succeeds. He's a great friend of mine. I wish only the success for him.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. Moving back to yourself jungling. On Leaguepedia, it's mentioned that you played 300 games on Lee Sin. Thoughts on this character?
My favorite champion. Actually, that's like really really old.
You can probably update it after, but
Yeah, I'll probably go and update it after, but like that's super old. I have like somewhere close to like 2,000 league games or something,
wow,
even more maybe.
wow.
He's my favorite champion. Definitely my favorite jungler. In season 2 I had what was I gonna say? It was
We were discussing your champions, specifically Lee Sin at the time, and you were mentioning season two.
season 2. I think my most played was Lee Sin, definitely at 250 games. Then my second most played at Udyr at 60 games. So there was a huge discrepancy
Wow.
between like the champions I played. Yeah. So
See, actually, continuing on to Lee Sin, what do you think about the Lee Sin rework Riot discussed, if you remember, or
I'm gonna cry if it actually happens. I'll actually cry.
would you say that he's overtuned right now, or do you think he's a balanced character?
I think he's a balanced champion.
Okay, okay. Um, and finally, this is like another question. I feel like some players who only watch the LCS might not know your playstyle as well. You already discussed that you like playing mechanical junglers. Is there a jungler in the professional scene, EU or NA, or even Korea, China, anywhere that you would compare yourself to? Like my playstyle is similar to his, or similarly to that, is there a jungler you watch out for and you're like, I want my style to be like his?
I want to be like Dexter. I think that just Dexter is like the perfect mix of a mechanically strong jungler and a team-based player and a good shot caller. I definitely, if there's like a jungler that I look up to, realistically, like I don't want to say like, oh, I want to be Kakao or like like Kakao's really good, or I want to be like the Bangi or like the Insect. No, like I'm thinking like realistically and within the region, I definitely like I want to be like if I'm setting like as like a standard,
Hmm.
I definitely look up to Dexter the most, which is actually really funny because it was kind of like it was me and the other coach for Dragonborn's Leduc that like really pushed to like try to get him like a place when we were like having issues with Maluno, and like back then when he was like barely playing in the scene and inexperienced, and then joining Lemon Dogs and having so much success and actually like having a hand in carrying that team to first place. It's really like It's like interesting, like amazing to see like his transformation as a
Yeah,
player.
he's taken off. He's definitely taken off. Are you still close to him actually?
We talk sometimes, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, we're both European people and
Oh
like
yeah.
in a strange land. we've both been kind of fucked over by U.S. customs too, so we kind of have something to bond on. No, I mean, I guess we talk often, as much as like, well, I mean, I don't see him every day, and like,
Yeah, no,
I
no.
guess we sometimes we do make plans to like hang out. Like he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. He's like a great person outside of the game. He's fun to hang around. He's just like a great guy, great person. I definitely consider like us friends, as far as like you could say what friends are.
Yeah, no, no, totally. Speaking of strong junglers, how would you rate the junglers in the amateur scene, and where would you place yourself?
I don't know lately because I'm playing like really poorly right now.
Mhm.
But I want to say like at the end of the the first Coke split,
Mhm.
like after the games to LMQ, I definitely felt that I was the strongest jungler and challenger, especially above No Name. Like I want people that are like, oh, but No Name, but like I think that out of all the players in LMQ, No Name is the weakest link. Even though he's like probably the second best jungler in Challenger,
I
and could easily be a solid jungler in like LCS, but I think that his early game is like super hit or miss, and the way that I was playing, specifically towards the end of the first Coke League split, like directly like countered the way he played. If you saw like in both games against LMQ, I first blood him both
Mhm.
games. And I kind of like called out his positioning in both games. So like I want to say I got into his head, and as long as I can stay in the head of like the junglers that I'm playing against, I feel like I get an advantage over them. So
So would you consider yourself a research-based jungler, like
not
Kasao?
necessarily research-based jungle. Yeah, actually, I do like when I see someone play, I store it to mind and I keep that in mind for next play. I just have good. I guess I have good game sense. Like if I was that player, what would be the most efficient play?
I see.
And then I throw that away and it's like, what do I feel like doing? Because sometimes junglers in the game, you won't ever know what the most efficient play is. This looks like it would be a good play, so I'm thinking, let's say I'm playing versus Xmithy, right? I'm playing Lee Sin, he's playing Elise. I know he starts blue and he's going to do this. Like, if I was Xmithy, I just finished my second buff. What do I want to do now? And it's like, I want to gank mid. Mid is pushing, so I go mid. And, you know, lo and behold, Xmithy's right there. And I'm not saying Xmithy just because, like, I'm just saying that just like an example.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, totally.
because it's just like I just try to like think as a jungler, if I had these teammates on my team, if I had ManCloud, if I had Zuna, Sheep, and Benny, what do I want to do?
I see, I see. That's really interesting. I haven't really heard or thought about that before. As
I'm
in
there's the word
context with that.
reactionary based. Like I never think for myself what I do. I play to my strength, which is knowing what the other jungler is going to do. Yeah, I do make plays. Yeah, I do aggressive plays sometimes, but I would almost always like to default to just countering what the enemy jungler does and just getting into his head.
I see. Would you say that well, you did mention that you felt you were playing poorly currently. Would you say that that's related to perhaps your play style? You're not getting these thoughts, or
I just feel like I'm slumping a little bit right now. My decision making is like on an all-time like really bad. I don't know. It's just like the kind of how it is right now. I just feel like I need to practice a lot and play more, and like be more like dedicated. Like I play a lot as much as possible, and I'm just like trying to hit my stride right now. And like especially now because I'm so frustrated with the way that the game is played, with like the late invades.
yeah, the trinket nerf has
Yeah.
had a lot of junglers complaining.
God bless. I'm just gonna like quote myself because I tweeted this. God bless. Jungling is so much fun right now. Flip a coin, pick a buff, and pray to God you aren't getting invaded.
Oh God.
Pretty much is how it is.
And actually, a specific player I wanted to ask about was the Seven Wars Lion team playing in NACL. Did you guys get a chance to play them? They
We
joined.
played against them a few times.
What do you feel about Thyak, their jungler? I personally think he's really strong, but their team can't sustain his leads.
He's
Or do you think
super
that-
aggressive, and I feel that he's like always trying to push forward and like push advantages, and his team is like always kind of lagging behind.
Would you
I
say
mean,
that?
I haven't played against Lion to get like a good I don't know. I don't know what to say.
So, no real comment.
No, no real comment.
Who's that behind you?
That's my roommate.
Oh, hey,
No, it's just like doing an
awkward. I didn't know it was
doing an
on.
interview. What's up?
Buddy.
Did you need something?
Hey.
Hi.
No, I'm just saying it.
What's up?
Haven't seen you in a while.
No. Where were you today?
I've been around.
You could put that in the video. I'm saying-
Absolutely.
Come down, come down. No, come down.
I
This
had
is
no
this is
idea
my
I was there.
this is my roommate Tebow. I
Oh.
actually don't know your real name. I only
Hey,
know
buddy.
Tebow.
My real name is Tebow.
Tebow. His real name is Tebow. I actually moved in with a bunch of like friends that like I met over League of Legends in
That's
Azusa,
exciting.
California. And that's okay. I live in like a huge house with like 9 other roommates, and
Wow.
he's Ryan. He's doing an interview. We're just like doing like like a long
Oh,
interview.
you guys are interviewing?
Yeah, it's fine though. It's fine. This is hilarious.
All right. I just haven't seen it in a while.
That's fine.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I didn't know I was on screen. Take it easy.
It's all good, dude.
Take care, guys.
All right. Let me know if you want me to edit that out.
No, you can keep that in, especially the part about like moving into like the house. That's like I think people would like to know that if they didn't know
Yeah,
that.
actually, well, I was planning to ask this earlier, but since with such a convenient interlude, I'll ask it now. I feel like you're actually really involved in the community. Like, you have the LTS viewing party, like all that.
Uh huh.
You're a lot more involved in the community, or like, you're a lot more involved in the community than a lot of other players. Why is that? Or like, I guess that's a weird thing to ask, but like, why is
So like I always had the impression that I didn't have many people that liked me. And like I don't have many fans, and then like at the relegations, people were like, "Hey, Broken Shard, I'm like your biggest fan. Don't worry about the red buff, man. That's all right." And I'm like, "Holy shit, I have fans."
that?
Where are they? So like I try to like make fan interaction one of my highest priorities
That's
besides
awesome.
actually
That's
playing the
awesome.
game. I hold like a huge like I put it above a lot of other things, and I definitely think that like fan interaction is like a huge deal. And like I just like try to keep myself open. Like if anyone wants to talk to me, I'm always around. Doesn't even have to be a league. It can be about life. It's like Broken Shard. My girlfriend broke up with me. What do I do? Like I honestly don't mind if it's like helping people and like interacting with my fans. Like I'm a bit of a fuck up sometimes. I'm not like the greatest role model, so in any ways that I can like succeed and like do good, that'd be really it'd be like really it makes me feel a lot better about like the way like what I'm doing and like my personality.
That's awesome to hear. Moving back to my questions, we were talking about jungling previously, like the jungler role. I had a question regarding the jungler role in general, which is the Meteos style of jungling. I feel like this style, like Saint had it for a bit, and like Meteos had it for a bit. It seems to crop up repeatedly. Why is that? Like, it just crops up and then.
I don't know. It's just like I don't know about the Meteos style. Like I've played against it a few times, and sometimes he can be like all up in your face.
Mhm.
But the farm heavy junglers, like junglers that farm a lot and get big, is definitely a style that can work on some of the junglers, specifically now. Like if it's ever gonna work, it's gonna be now.
Really? Why would you say that?
Because like the way that junglers build and like the junglers that you play.
Well, I mean, because it's funny because Meteos has actually kind of moved away from that style to like Lee Sin, Elise. That's interesting that you think it's stronger now. Um, would you okay? So building off like kind of like a separate tangent on that. Would you say this style like of farming heavily requires like strong mechanical skill? Because the interesting thing is that early game junglers like Lee Sin, Elise, like these are like very mechanics focused, right? Like you have to like make these plays and like, but like late game junglers like kind of like a Mumu or like I guess Zac or like those guys. Or if you have someone who you'd like to bring up right now, who would you say?
Like I just feel that like compared to the other junglers, like tanks are weaker.
You feel like tanks are weaker, but wait, but you think that farming heavily is good? I'm a little confused here. What?
Yeah, tanks specifically, like the tank junglers, like Amumu and Zac, they've kind of fallen off and they're weaker because like it's harder to itemize better for them.
Mhm.
Farming a lot and getting like farm on a jungler, specifically champions like Evelynn and Kha'Zix,
Oh,
they're
I see,
good.
I see.
They're good, and like you don't have to farm super hard on them because they do good ganks and they're
Yeah,
really good.
yeah, I
defenses.
see.
Yeah,
I see. Okay, so that's what you meant there. That's interesting because normally, like, I think that people would associate farming heavily with like those like Sejuani or like Nasus or like those guys.
nah, those are like tank junglers. I'm talking about like more the assassin junglers like Evelynn
I
at
see, I
least.
see. So and the question is, why don't you play this style of heavy farming?
It's a bit hard. It's like um I don't like the farm heavy style, and like my team is like, "Yo, Broken, you should farm that wave bomb." I'm like, no, let Robert farm it. I'm just like, I've played so much like coming into season 2 and season 3 because that was like the peak of my competitive like actual like competitive involvement.
Mhm.
That like when those days happen, you didn't farm often on the junglers, so it's like hard for me to like understand like, oh, I should farm now. I should just like farm heavily. I do like I would never like prioritize myself farm based over my carry, specifically lane farm. Unless a carry or a laner tells me to take that farm, I won't like actively look to pursue it.
I see, I see. Quick thoughts on some strong junglers in the meta right now then. I noticed that you said a while ago that Jin Zhao would be making a comeback, and I mean, Diamond has begun playing him, or do you think Jin Zhao is strong right now?
Specifically because a lot of the junglers get banned out.
Mhm.
Yeah, he could be good.
Oh, so he's more like a secondary comfort pick
Yeah,
than like.
it's like the way I feel is like all these OP junglers and they're all banned. Oh, look at all these decent junglers are now OP because they're all banned. So
I see, I see. Actually, I had some. There's some characters that I guess you're kind of well known for. Hecarim.
I was not well known for Hecarim.
Okay,
Not even.
yeah, I was a little confused on that. Moving on. Olaf, you still play Olaf right now. He's kind of fallen off with other teams. Why do you think Olaf is still a strong pick?
My analyst's exact words. Yo, your decision making on Lee Sin is shit, but your decision making on Olaf is 10 out of 10. So just play Olaf.
Would
I don't know
you?
why. I don't know why my decision making on Olaf is like I'm always at the right place at the right time. Like I haven't had a bad Olaf game in so long, so I'm just like, oh well, I guess I'm good at Olaf, so I just play him. I mean,
Uh,
because I play him more passively, and I just try to like aim for the
oh,
counter, and I
I
don't have to
see.
do
I
aggressive
see.
plays. And so like when I'm always showing up to counter, it's like, well, they've used flashes, they can't really run away from the axes.
Oh, I see. I see. So, what other junglers would you say are strong right now? And
That aren't
other,
like the OPs. I
yeah.
guess Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao is definitely good. Nocturne to some extent can be good sometimes.
Hmm.
Elise is pretty good
Still pretty
still.
good.
Yeah.
And my last jungler character thought is Wukong. He's kind of fallen off right now. Is there a reason
Mm,
why you'd say that
it's
happened?
it's more like the thing about Wukong is that his early game is quite weak, but he scales super hard.
Mhm.
And if you like avoid team fights until level 6, then like yeah, he can be good.
Oh,
And if you late swap, like he can take towers really fast too because of his auto attack reset and the attack speed he gets from E.
okay, okay. Um, well, and considering that you've had jungler experience in both North America and Europe, what would you say is the difference in jungle style between the two regions?
I wouldn't know anymore. When I left, it was NA was more passive and EU was more aggressive, but it kind of feels like it took a turn for the switch. Like EU is somewhat playing more passively and NA like more aggressively early game.
Interesting, interesting. Would you say there's a reason for this, or
I'm
just
not
like,
really sure. I just think that's just like how the teams priorities. Priorities are
oh,
a huge part of it, so there's that.
okay. So another thing I wanted to ask was, I guess, like kind of the history of junglers. So there's been a so I'm not sure if you saw this, but there was a video from Loco Doco, and he said that the Odd One and Saint Vicious were like the father of junglers. Like you're either an Odd One or a Saint Vicious, like in terms of how you play the game. I think that he was referring to during the season 2 time period where there were farm heavy
Oh,
junglers and
oh, that
gankers.
farm heavy. Oh,
That's
um,
what that's what I meant.
so either the guy who's just like fuck my team, let me get like play, get big, and like do those carries, or the guy who's like who plays for the team.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think it's a play style. It just depends on your team. It's like if your team can be built around supporting you,
Hmm.
maybe you're the most mechanically like the best mechanical player on
I
your
see.
team. The champions that you play fit well with the champions that they play. Like they could play like Oriana, not a super hard carry. You play it with like Udyr and you just like go in and like play like a Saint Vicious. Yeah, it could work. Versus Odd One who wants to play like the Maokai, wants to play the Nautilus, to set up for Dyrus playing like Jace or Reginald playing like Ryze.
Yes, yes,
It just
yes.
depends on like your team.
Who would you so with those two having set the jungler trend? Who did you look up to when you were playing? Like, not it doesn't have to be one of those two, but just maybe like Diamond Prox or
Diamond Prox,
Diamond
yeah.
Prox.
Diamond Prox, yeah. Absolutely. When Sinzao got reworked specifically, I was playing him a lot, and I was looking at Diamond Prox to see like what we would build. And he did like a Spillowstone Madrid's build,
Hmm.
and I was like, I don't really like that. So I tried a Heart of Gold Madrid's build, and I'm like, this is okay. Then I tried Heart of Gold Philostone and Madrid's, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
But I
he
definitely,
really set the trend on those
I definitely
builds.
looked at the way Diamond Prox played and like the champions that he played and like how he played,
I
and
see.
kind of like set like a template for me.
I see. I see.
Diamond Prox and Maluno. Those were the two.
Maluno.
Maluno.
Interesting. Could you speak more about that? Because he's kind of like, I mean, he retired and like he
Oh,
wasn't
in
very
season 2, he was probably like the second best jungler in AU.
really.
Probably
What made him so good?
just the champions that were good. Like his Mundo was fucking insane. His Nocturne was like really good. Just Maluno in general was a solid player, and season 2 was like a perfect meta for him.
I see. Actually, speaking of EU junglers, another thing I wanted to bring up was the junglers on SK Gaming. They had quite a bit of issues with this was between season 2 slash season 3. Like not right now, but season 2, season 3, they had a lot of issues. Like they had Hercubot, they had Aranea. Like what was going on with all that? Like would you know?
RNF fell off really hard because of like real life issues, obviously apparently. So he
Oh,
he started failing, and picking up Harkubot was good because I definitely thought Harkubot was a solid jungler.
I see. He doesn't really play anymore right now. Was this a personal retirement issue?
I believe yeah he had eye
Oh.
problems.
Oh, right, right, right. No, I do remember that. Who would you say is the strongest jungler at this moment?
The strongest champion or player?
Jungler. Uh, champion, I guess. Champion, sure, but also, well, I was
Kha'Zix.
specifically thinking of a player.
Kha'Zix.
Kha'Zix, player?
Um, in the world,
Yeah, in the world.
Uh, I don't know. Like, I guess I would have to make like a top tier. Would probably be like Kakao would be up there definitely. Insec is really good, so probably one of those two.
One of those two.
A Korean,
A Korean.
a Korean.
Not
Yeah.
Diamond Prox.
No, Diamond Prox I felt like is in a bit of a decline, but he's coming back. He's coming back now.
He's coming back. Okay, and to wrap up the interview, my final question is, going back to the NACL, if you were to make a team with the 5 strongest players in the NACL, who would you pick? With like the amateur scene, like LMQ, Team 8, like those guys?
Ooh, with LMQ,
Yes, including LMQ.
Probably top. Zhao Wei Zhao,
Top?
probably top. Zhao Wei Zhao mid. Robert X Lee, AD carry, and either Bubba Dub or more support. Yeah.
I see, I see. And yourself would be in the jungle.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, that was going to be the last question, but I have to ask. Probably top. What?
I
what-
have really good synergy with Prawley, and he's such a good like overall like versatile player. I feel that he would just be like another Extinct. He would fit into the top lane role
I
very
see,
well.
I see. That's
He could do it. He honestly could. And Zhao Wei Zhao's a fucking beast.
awesome. All right. So, any final words you have to say, or
I guess shout out to my sponsors. Could I do that?
yeah, absolutely. Or like
Shout out to
fans.
Complexity Gaming, my sponsors, Sound Blaster, Cyberpower, Newegg, Creative, Twitch, Lear Gaming, DX Racer, Scuff Gaming, and Pawn It Wear. Thank you all for like the support that they've given us, and Complexity have been really great to us
Okay.
since picking us up, and really happy with like what they've been doing. So, yay, thank you guys. I'm like in a lobby with EG, and like they're talking like I'm doing an interview, and Krepel's like, who the fuck wants to listen to Broken Shard for an hour? And I'm just like, I don't know. I guess some people do. So.
No.
Thanks to all the fans that might be watching this. Really appreciate the support that you've given both my team and myself, and just keep being there, and I'll keep being there as well. You know where to find me. I reply to almost all my tweets, so if you need to ask me something or talk to me about anything, just tweet me, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you.